a friend, here's what to say. Let's talk in English, 10 minutes every day. When you need a friend, here's what to say. Let's talk in English, 10 minutes every day. That's the way.
Hello everyone, welcome to Let's Talk in English. I'm Garrett.
And my name is Esther. Today our topic is animals.
And our title is Insects in the World.
Now first, let's talk about animals. Animals are living things that eat and breathe. They can see and they can hear. Animals are things like elephants and dogs.
Exactly. Insects are also animals, but they are some of the smallest ones. And there are many, many of them on Earth.
Insects are special because they have 6 feet and they have 3 parts to their bodies.
Exactly. Often we don't like insects. It can be annoying when they come into our homes, but today we'll learn about the amazing things that insects do and how they help us.
That's true. Now it's time for our reading. Garrett, can you help us?
Insects live in most places in the world, and there are billions of them. There are about 1.4 billion insects for every person on our planet. They are very important for nature. Bees and butterflies help plants grow by moving pollen from one flower to another. Ants clean up by eating dead plants and animals. And butterflies are beautiful. They make us happy when we see them. Even though insects are small, they help keep the world healthy and full of life.
Thank you so much, Garrett. It's good to know that we do need insects in our world, even though I don't really like them myself.
Right, I agree with that a lot. Hopefully, this lesson can help us to learn about the good parts of insects. And hopefully, we can find our Find It answer. Here's the question. How do bees help plants grow?
How do bees help plants grow? Listen carefully to find the answer. Now let's go to Sonia, who will teach us our keywords.
Susie 在午餐的食物里发现了一只蚂蚁。There's an ant in my lunch. 名词 ant 就是蚂蚁。他不太开心，可是 Greg 却说蚂蚁是很有趣的昆虫。But ants are interesting insects. 名词 insect 就是昆虫。他们透过吃死掉的动植物来促进地球洁净。They help keep the world clean by eating dead plants and animals. 形容词 dead 就是死的。Susie 说蝴蝶是她最喜欢的昆虫。Butterflies are my favorite insect. 名词 butterfly 就是蝴蝶。他还喜欢有花和蝴蝶的花园，可是 Greg 觉得如果没有蜜蜂，就不会有很多花。But you wouldn't have very many flowers without bees. 名词 bee 就是蜜蜂。
Hey, there's an ant in my lunch. I don't like ants, especially when they get into my food.
But ants are interesting insects. They're important for nature.
True. They help keep the world clean by eating dead plants and animals.
Insects help the world in many ways, and there are a lot of them. For every person on our planet, there are about 1.4 billion insects.
Today, Susie is talking to Greg, and they are getting ready to eat lunch.
Right, but there is a surprise, and it's not a good surprise.
Right. Susie says, hey, there's an ant in my lunch. Friends, how would you feel if there was an ant in your lunch? An ant is a very small insect, and ants like to be where there is food.
Right. I think when I think of insects, I often think of ants first. There are so many ants on Earth. They're often black, and when you see one ant, there are usually thousands more behind it.
Right, they crawl on the ground and they're often very small. If you leave a piece of candy on your table or some sugar or honey, then you might see ants soon.
All right. Well, Susie doesn't like ants, especially when they get into her food. And friends, I don't like ants is today's calendar phrase.
I don't like ants.
I don't like ants. 我不喜欢蚂蚁。
Ants are interesting insects.
I don't like ants.
Ants help keep the world clean.
I don't like ants.
Ants are important for nature.
I don't like ants.
Look, this ant is eating our lunch.
Ew, that's why I don't like ants. Ooh.
I don't like ants.
I don't like ants. 我不喜欢蚂蚁。
Greg tells Susie that ants are interesting insects. They're important for nature.
Right. They're not just annoying, they're actually important. There again, we heard our word insect. Yes, these are very small animals. There's a similar word. It is the word bug. Insects are bugs.
Right. When people talk about them, you'll hear both words, the word insect and the word bug. Now, Susie agrees with Greg that ants are important in nature. She says they help keep the world clean by eating dead plants and animals.
All right, yeah, I guess you wouldn't want those sitting around. And friends, something that is dead is no longer alive.
Right. Animals can be dead and plants can be dead as well. Now, Greg tells us more about insects. He says insects help the world in many ways, and there are a lot of them.
There sure are. Listen to this. For every person on our planet, there are about 1.4 billion insects. Now, there are a lot more than 1.4 billion insects. That's for every one person on the planet.
Wow, that's very hard for me to imagine. Let's talk about this word billion. It's the number 1 plus 9 zeros.
It's a big number, and we need some big help from our friend Sonia.
Greg 说，在我们这个地球上，人和昆虫的数量大概是1:14亿。For every person on our planet, there are about 1.4 billion insects. 句型 for every 什么，逗号 there are 什么，用来表达数量的比例，说明每一个什么就有另一个什么。来看例句。For every boy in our class, there are 2 girls. 我们班上每一个男生就有2个女生。或是 For every teacher, there are 10 students. 每一位老师就有10名学生。再一句 For every dog in the shelter, there are 3 cats. 收容所里每一只狗就有3只猫。
Thank you so much, Sonia. That was really helpful. Well, if you want to figure out how many insects there are, you could take that number 1.4 billion and multiply it, or times, the number of people on Earth, and you'd get the answer.
That would be a very large number. Friends, now it's time for us to take a break. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
Let's talk in English. 10 minutes every day.
Welcome back. Friends, do you like insects? Why or why not? How about you, Garrett?
Well, I don't think I mind insects when they're outside. Those insects are okay. But when insects come into my house, I really don't like them.
Right, especially ants or mosquitoes or even cockroaches. I don't like them inside our home. Let's continue our lesson.
Butterflies are my favorite insect. They're so beautiful.
It makes me happy when I see a butterfly.
Me too. I love gardens with flowers and butterflies.
But we wouldn't have very many flowers without bees.
You're right. Bees help plants grow by moving pollen from one flower to another.
Insects are small, but they help keep the world healthy and full of life.
Here, Susie talks about her favorite insect. This is the one that she likes the most. What insect does she like the most?
She likes the butterfly the most. That's because they look beautiful, unlike a lot of other insects.
Butterflies are insects that you often see in pictures of spring. You can see their beautiful wings and they fly.
Yeah, those wings often have pretty colors and patterns. Many people do like butterflies.
Now, Greg also tells us more about insects. He says it makes me happy when he sees a butterfly.
Right, it makes him happy to see those beautiful insects. Well, Susie says she loves gardens with flowers and butterflies.
And Greg knows more about butterflies. He says you wouldn't have very many flowers without bees.
So there's a special relationship there. If you want flowers, then you need bees. This is another insect. Before we talk about them, let's go to Sonia.
Susie 说：“我喜欢有花和蝴蝶的花园。” Greg 回答：“可是如果没有蜜蜂，就不会有很多花。” But you wouldn't have very many flowers without bees. 句型 You would not have A without B 表示你若没有 B 就不会有 A， 强调出 B 的重要性。来看例句 You would not have shade without trees 若没有树就不会有阴凉处。或是 You wouldn't have energy without coffee 你若没有喝咖啡就不会有精力。再一句You wouldn't have a business without customers. 你若没有顾客，就不会有生意。
Thank you so much, Sonia. All right, we heard about bees. Esther, let's talk about them.
Sure. Bees are insects you often see when people talk about honey. When bees fly, they often make a sound like zzz.
Exactly. Bees are interesting animals, but some people are afraid of them. They can sting you and it really hurts.
Right. So if you see a bee, you have to be careful. Don't try to hit the bee or try to run because the bee might sting or bite you.
Just give it some space. Don't try to go too close to it. But do try to answer our Find It question. How do bees help plants grow?
They help plants grow by moving pollen from one flower to another.
Right, they move things around. Pollen is kind of like a dust or a powder that's on the flower. Now, that dust or powder, the pollen, needs to go to the other flowers around it, but the flowers can't do that themselves.
Right, that's where the bees come in. Bees will carry this pollen from one flower to another. Then new flowers can grow.
Exactly. Well, insects are small, but they sure do help keep the world healthy and full of life. We don't want dead plants and animals sitting around. And of course, we do want beautiful things like butterflies and flowers.
Right, so we are thankful for the insects. There are around us. And remember, for every one person, there's 1.4 billion insects.
Wow, that sure is a big number, and we sure did have some great keywords today. Let's try and review them together.
Here is our first keyword, insect. Insect. Sally is afraid of insects.
Bee. Bee. There's a bee on the window.
Butterfly. Butterfly. There are butterflies in the garden.
Ant. Ant. Why are there ants in your room?
Dead. Dead. Clean up the dead leaves, please. Friends, those are today's keywords. You're doing a great job.
And now it's your turn.
Today's keywords are insect, bees, butterfly, ants, and dead. Now it's your turn to use them in a sentence. First one, there are around those flowers. They make honey and go bzzz. That's right. There are bees around those flowers. Next, the are eating a piece of candy. They are small and love sweet things. You got it. The ants are eating a piece of candy. Next, that is a pretty, it has colorful wings. Nice job. That is a pretty butterfly. Next, there's an on the flower. It could be a bee, an ant, or correct. There's an insect on the flower. Last one. Why are there bugs everywhere? Ew. Why are there dead bugs everywhere? Good job, friends. That's all for today. See you next time for your turn.
Hey, there's an ant in my lunch. I don't like ants, especially when they get into my food.
But ants are interesting insects. They're important for nature.
True. They help keep the world clean by eating dead plants and animals.
Insects help the world in many ways, and there are a lot of them. For every person on our planet, there are about 1.4 billion insects.
Butterflies are my favorite insect. They're so beautiful.
It makes me happy when I see a butterfly.
Me too. I love gardens with flowers and butterflies.
But we wouldn't have very many flowers without bees.
You're right. Bees help plants grow by moving pollen from one flower to another.
Insects are small, but they help keep the world healthy and full of life.
One, two, zzz. Let's review.
Hazel, did you know that for every person on Earth, there are about 1.4 billion insects?
Whoa, that's a lot of insects. I guess they really like living with us.
I guess so. They're everywhere, but they do a lot of good things. Like bees and butterflies, they help plants grow.
That's right. Bees move pollen from flower to flower to flower, and that helps the flowers grow.
I know. And don't forget about ants. They're nature's cleaners. They eat dead plants and animals.
Oh, I never thought about that. They keep things tidy. I guess insects are like tiny superheroes.
Yeah, they're small but mighty. Even butterflies are helpful.
And they're also very beautiful. They make the world a nicer place.
Yes, even the tiniest insects make a big difference.
Yeah, that's true. Insects help make the world a better place.
So, insects aren't just bugs. They are nature's superheroes.
Hooray! Maybe, yeah, maybe.
All right, everybody, get ready. Put your hands in the air and make some noise. 'Cause we can read, party, speak some English, and have a good time. Are you ready to go?
A friend loves at all times. A friend helps at all times. A friend trusts at all times. A good friend lasts a lifetime. A friend gives at all times. A friend cares at all times. A friend endures at all times. A good friend lasts a lifetime.
Here we go. Hands up. Here we go. Studio, last two is in the house.
Warm as the sunshine, shining through the darkest night. Standing there right by your side, truly a friend for life. Friend loves at all times. Friend helps at all times. Friend trusts at all times. Good friend lasts a lifetime. Friend gives at all times. Friend cares at all times. Friend endures at all times. Good friend lasts a lifetime.
Yeah, that's right.
Today, Greg said a sentence I really like. He said, "It makes me happy when I see a butterfly." You know, we can use other sentences with "it makes." I'll make a sentence. It makes me happy when I travel and discover new places. Garrett, can you make a sentence like this as well?
All right, let me think. It makes me sad when winter ends. I love the cool temperatures.
And now it's summertime. So in a few months, Garrett, it'll be winter again.
I can't wait. Well, friends, try to make sure you can make sentences like this too. Talk about them with your friends.
And friends, tomorrow we'll continue to talk about insects. So remember to join us again tomorrow.
Right. Look around your house or outside. Try to see what insects there are. Even if you find them annoying, you can probably look up some of the good things that they provide.
Right. Try to see if you can name 5 insects in English. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. That's right here on
Let's Talk in English. Goodbye.
Bye.